Here is a compilation of some of my favourite stories from this and last year. I hope you enjoy the stories and the ambience as well. The Ghost Walked on Halloween. Sent in by Anonymous. Hey, so I guess it is time for me to share my story too. I don't know much about Aboriginal folk tales or anything like that. I can't really even say I know much about the Australian cryptids or things. It is something I'd like to learn about more though. I think there's something like the Yowie and the Bunyip. I don't know. Anyway, this was in the early 2000s, so social media isn't like how it is now. It was still very much in the early stages. People spent more time on forums rather than on MySpace or Facebook. I like to browse and find interesting and free places to go. One post mentioned a small abandoned ghost town, where there had been sightings of ghosts and other strange things happening. At the time, I thought maybe people wanted to see ghosts so much they ended up seeing them. A small group of friends and I decided to go out into one of the country areas to celebrate Halloween. We were at the age where we couldn't all get into clubs, and we were too old to go trick-or-treating. None of us had the funds for a decent house party either, and none of our parents would have agreed to it anyway. And so, we all decided to give this a try. Fortunately for us, Halloween fell on a weekend, so we didn't have to worry about school. Not that it was a priority for any of us at the time. It wouldn't have been the first time we skipped school for one reason or another. So we decided this was best to do. We got some grog, or alcoholic drinks, some snacks and some other things. You know, more naughty things if you get my drift. We drove out to the middle of nowhere, you know, where the skies are clear from the smog of the city, and we wouldn't bother anyone. You know when people say that the veil between the living and the dead is weaker on Halloween? I think it is true. So we found the abandoned town. It was so far gone that the roofs were no longer on the buildings and it only had exposed brick. What we didn't realize at first was that we were at an old graveyard. We played some music, got the drinks out and started having a good time. We were drunkenly singing along with the music, eating, and we didn't have a single care in the world. It was an amazing night. As the night drawled on, we started talking about ghost stories in order to fit the theme of the night. One of my friends started telling us some stupid story I'm pretty sure was quoted from some awful horror movie, hoping to pass it off as his own. We laughed, and one of my friends, one of the ones who was more into spooky stuff, wanted us all to use a Ouija board. All of us instantly said no to that. The same friend who said his stupid story started going on about some bullshit Ouija story that he and his other group of friends experienced. He's always kind of questionable when it comes to integrity. As the night went on though, both his jokes and his stories began to get a lot easier to listen to. It got really chilly though, and I wrapped a picnic blanket around my shoulders. We all complained about the cold and little things started happening. We felt like we were being watched. You know that feeling when you can sense eyes on you? We had that. We could have sworn we heard the faint sounds of children whispering and laughing around us. Whenever we turned to look, it would be quiet again. Now, we weren't exactly clear-minded, if you know what I mean. I don't want to incriminate myself with that, but you get my drift. You know that feeling you get when you shouldn't be somewhere, and if you stay, you're going to get in trouble? I was starting to get that. The radio started to get a lot of static, something that wouldn't have been an issue before. I wonder what the hell it could have been. You know how you never notice noise until everything goes quiet? All the crickets and other insects went dead quiet out of the blue. We all started talking about how it was best for us to sober up and leave. I had a mate tell me that when this happens, it is because there is a predator or something dangerous around. None of us wanted to fuck around and find out to see what it was. We started to pack up the car with all the stuff we brought with us and put out the fire, making sure it's completely out. We didn't want to be the cause of any bushfires. We all sat awkwardly in the car, while my mate who was driving was sobering up, drinking coffee and whatever. To be fair, I don't think he was under the limit yet, but we figured we'd try our luck anyway. As he was about to drive off, We started to hear the laughing and talking again. That was enough for us. We were out of there. He began to speed down the deserted road. I looked back and saw a group of shadow figures watching us go. There was even a flickering light there too. I don't want to ever go back to that place again. So yeah, be careful what you do on Halloween. I didn't used to believe in ghosts or spirits before, but this experience turned me into a believer. I don't want to think about what would have happened to us out there if we stayed. My Halloween since have been quiet, and I hope to keep it that way. Human meat. Sent in by Anonymous. Hey everyone. I wanted to post this story up in hopes of explaining the horror that you actually find on the dark web. Honestly, most of the things you find on the dark web aren't actually the horror movie cliché-lin websites that everyone seems to think they are. Most of the dark web is questionable or illegal adult content. People wanting to buy medications illegally, etc. If you're wanting something like what you see in the movies, you actually have to know where to look, as in have the onion link. I'm not saying those things don't exist. They just aren't easily or readily available. A lot of people tend to think it's like a dark version of Google, where you can search for crazy stuff and be given results within a few moments. It's really not. Anyways, that out of the way, I want to talk about a dark web experience that was honestly horrifying for my friends and I. This was several years ago. I think we were 17 at the time, and we thought we were hackers. I know, it sounds stupid, but the three of us were all about the nerdy crap. Python, networking, and again, quote-unquote, hacking. I'll spare myself the embarrassment of explaining all of that. Just know we knew our way around a computer. Naturally, the three of us gravitated towards places like Reddit, and then 4chan and such. I don't remember where we heard about the dark web. Probably from a friend, the news, or one of the aforementioned websites. But when we learned about the difference between surface web and dark web, our curiosity was piqued. We started looking into what it was, what was out there, and what we could do. And of course we were enchanted with the hacker haven it was glorified to be. We thought we would get on there, look at some of the questionable sites, and be the coolest kids because we accessed content that others didn't know existed. So we did what we had to, loaded up Tor, got information for some onion links, and got ready to have our minds blown. Of course, it ended up being not as interesting as we thought it was going to be. The sites were plain and bland. We saw a couple of sites selling pills. Others we didn't even bother scrolling through because of the front pages. And a few webcam sites that we honestly weren't interested in. I think all of us were getting a bit disappointed in what we were finding. Though I don't know what we were expecting to find, really. I think we just started clicking through, going anywhere and everywhere we could get into. Looking back, this was a really stupid idea. After clicking around for a while, we ended up on a page that looked a little flashier than the others. I can't remember the name of the page, but I think it was something along the lines of your choice or something like that. As we started on the home screen, the whole page looked like it was a site for a butcher shop. There were a number of pictures of meat slices and cuts all over the front page, explaining the quality and what seasoning went best with each piece. Unfortunately, I think you can all see where this is going. We ended up on a page with a list of cuts, and each of them had a diagram of a person. The part where the meat came from was highlighted. Some of what was on the page was horribly graphic, so I won't explain it in this story. But you can imagine what was all there. One of the most disturbing parts of this website was its explanation on its sourcing. I recall explaining that all packaging would be discreet, and they would include their own seasoning packet that would go best with what you choose. What's worse, they explained all their meat was fresh and sourced on demand. They touted the fact they had the ability to get everything when it was ordered. Obviously, we were freaked out by seeing this. Seeing this kind of meat. We got off the site and pretty much immediately removed Tor. We all kept up our pursuits in the IT world. But I don't think any of us have been on the dark web since. Neckbeard Creeper. Sent in by Anonymous. And narrated by ladyspookariayt. Hiya. So I decided to send this in on a whim. First, some backstory about me. I'm a 25-year-old female. I go to university studying psychology, and I work as a receptionist part-time. I'm also caring for and live with my elderly grandmother, but I don't care for her alone. I'm an only child, so there are no siblings, and my parents passed away in my late teens. My grandmother raised me, and the extended family helped out quite a lot. In fact, they still do. However, taking care of her still takes up a lot of my time. I do my best to keep in touch with my old and new friends. Just, people get busy, and they understand because they have their own busy lives. So, I'm not a quiet person by any means. However, I am careful about the people I do end up allowing in my life. I don't have the time or the energy to deal with drama or bad behavior from people. I have a pretty good group of friends. So, my friends and I organized a D&D session for one night. Cool. I asked one of my cousins to look after my grandmother and she agreed. This was a fortnightly or monthly event depending on our schedules, so it wasn't out of the norm. When I left the house, I gave them both a hug and kiss goodnight before I set off. I drove there, and when I arrived, I saw we had a larger group than usual. We had the core base of players, then there were the people who wanted to occasionally play, and other people who just wanted to heckle from the sidelines, or just hang out with everyone. I wasn't in the mood to play, so I would be one of the hangers-on, and I wanted to catch up with people. The group would occasionally bring other people who they thought might fit in or who wanted to get involved with D&D. Sometimes they were family, friends or workmates who they thought would fit in. It was a chance to meet some new people and make some new friends. In fact, that was how I found the friend group many, many years ago. There were a couple of new people, so I thought I would go over and see what they were like. I said hello to the new girl. I'll call her Sally, just to keep things anonymous. She was nice. We were of a similar age and she had always had an interest in D&D, but never had a group local to her. We talked about her job, her living situation, and made other small talk as we started to get to know each other. Her other group of friends were not into D&D, so it made it harder for her to try it out. She found the group through our mutual friend David, who was her workmate, and agreed to tag along to see if she liked it. We talked for a while about the items she would need, and I reminded her there was no rush to get anything. We had extras she could borrow until she was ready to buy her own. We were laughing and chatting for a little while. It was a great conversation. I wouldn't call her a friend yet, but we were definitely on our way to becoming friends. Things were off to a fantastic start. One of the new dudes came over, and I knew by looking at him, there was a chance I wouldn't like him. I know. Don't judge a book by its cover. However, he was the definition of a neckbeard. I don't think he bathed, and had an overall scruffy appearance, and had a habit of standing uncomfortably close to people. We shuffled away from him, and he kept trying to get close to us, like he wanted to touch us. We moved into the kitchen and put the kitchen counter between us and him. Unfortunately, he sat down on one of the stools. For a minute, I could have sworn he was trying to get a look at my breasts. Again. His BO hit us before we saw him, and it made my eyes water. Sally and I looked at each other in disgust for a moment, hoping he would take the hint and just leave. Either the neckbeard didn't notice or didn't care. We stared at him for a moment, but since we were friends with someone who brought him, and we were friends with the host, we didn't want to make a fuss. So I decided to break the silence and said, "Hey." He leaned forward to us, and I could smell the sickly aroma of his breath. Dental hygiene was certainly not on his agenda. "Looks like the pair of you are hitting it off." He leered creepily at us. Sally looked incredibly uncomfortable and mumbled something under her breath. I couldn't quite catch it. Sally was well endowed, and his gaze lingered there for far too long. Actually, lingered is too mild a word. He outright stared at them. Sally was quiet and tried to turn away from him. She was new here, and I think she didn't want to cause any problems. I was about to comfort her and make an excuse to leave when, "I'd love to see you both naked together." He gave a disgusting look at us. I'm pretty sure he thought it was sexy, but it made him look even more repulsive. He chuckled and leaned closer to us. "Maybe I can join in too. You need to have a man in there for a good time." I've heard the stereotypes about neckbeards. Some of them I always thought were a little exaggerated, but this just... it was so disgusting and gross. I never thought I'd be in one of these stories. "Absolutely not. What the hell is wrong with you? You're so repulsive. Go the hell away," I said firmly. Sally was silent. The neckbeard kept looking at me in his creepy way. He leaned forward and whispered, "I like it better when they struggle. It feels better." My stomach turned, and I had to resist the urge to strike him. This was so not okay on so many levels. Now, our friend group was not the type to tolerate this type of behavior. Unfortunately, we were in the kitchen alone. Most of them would have either been in the lounge room playing or were outside smoking. So, I knew I needed to get loud about this. "No! Listen! Get the hell away from us and stop creeping on us!" I yelled. And yep, that definitely got the attention of the rest of the group. People came in from outside and from the lounge room. The neckbeard backed off and made excuses about what had happened. He said I was being all crazy and jealous because he was flirting with Sally instead of me. I could have sworn I heard several snorts of laughter amongst our group of friends. I told them our side of the story, and Sally backed me up, agreeing with what had been said. Josh, the host, said to the neckbeard it was best for him to leave and not to come next time, that he wasn't welcome anymore. The neckbeard kept going with his protests and his lies. He started sulking like a child, and I couldn't believe I was watching a full-grown man behave like this. He started screaming at us about how we were asking for it, and that we were teasers who wanted him. It was so hard to not laugh in his face. That everything we did was for attention. His retorts eventually made no sense at all, and finally, after the last tantrum, he left or was rather herded outside. And we all enjoyed the rest of our night. Scott, the one who had brought the neckbeard from work, apologized to everyone about it, especially Sally and I. He said he didn't think he would be like that. That he was a quiet guy from work who didn't sound like he had many friends. So, what happened next? Essentially, the neckbeard went on social media and blasted us on some incel forum. The other little incels agreed with him, and yeah. So, neckbeard, I hope to never see you or experience the trauma of your aroma, ever again. Buying a child. Sent in by Anonymous. I used to be one of those people that liked to go on the deep web for the fun of it, and would frequent a number of the underground style sites. I worked in the IT industry, and for some reason, the deep web and dark web are these strangely taboo things that we aren't supposed to discuss with normal people. But it's not exactly the best kept secret. Those of us that do go on tour and look at things that are, at their best, questionable, it's almost like we can smell it on other users. We all have this weird sixth sense that can tell if the person next to us is one that pursues the deep. Okay, not really, but typically we can tell by your demeanor if you're someone that knows what they're talking about. And most of the time, something on the deep web will come up. I'm the kind of person that knows what they're talking about, probably a bit too well. Let me put it this way. If it was something that was shady, sketchy, unsavory, or otherwise legally grey, I was probably spending some time each and every day looking at it to see what was what. I spent more than my fair share of time on a few deep web community boards, mostly chatting it up with like-minded people that also had too much spare time on their hands. My favourite pastimes were posting on the conspiracy boards. It's crazy what people will say when there's no limit or filter. And honestly, some of the things they say out there may be more true than we'd like to believe. Case in point, hitman sites totally exist, and are more than likely legitimate businesses. Well, the ones that aren't honeypots anyway. Aside from that, there are a lot of marketplaces that exist on the deep web for things that are questionable. But the dark web is where things turn to the downright illegal. I will admit to having spent my fair share of time and money on deep web markets. I've bought things that are illegal to own, and I've seen things that I shouldn't have seen. And things I definitely didn't want to see. That said, I wanted to write this quick story about one of the marketplaces that actually kind of freaked me out and made me pull away from the illegal stuff. There was a particular marketplace that existed that touted itself as the be-all and end-all of dark web markets, and was essentially this massive dark web version of Craigslist or Facebook Market. If you were looking for something that you shouldn't have been, and were willing to spend Bitcoin, then you were in luck, because odds were that they had it. Bootleg movies? Check. Viagra from another country? Check. Computers potentially stolen from a government facility? You guessed it. Check. However, it got a bit deeper than that. They also had services that you could pay for. Nothing like the hitman sites. But if you wanted to, quote unquote, have a good time with someone about to die, then you could. Hey, I don't judge others for what they do behind closed doors. I keep my opinions to myself and just live my life. That said, I actually stumbled on something that I initially thought, no way that's real. Until I messaged the seller, and then, well, I'm not so sure anymore. It could have been a honeypot, or a Fed trap. But if so, it was a damn good one. I was checking out the market one afternoon, looking for something stupid. I think I was looking for shoes or something. Don't ask. When I stumbled upon something that was simply labeled new. I like new things, so I eagerly clicked it and went to read what was so interesting about this new product. Well, this new product wasn't really a product. The description read something like, and I'm paraphrasing, have access to any age up to 7 and can deliver. Forged paperwork extra. Must have payment ready for any and all offers. Obviously, this first thought was that this was a full-on honeypot or scam for people that were looking for children, which would be a fairly niche scam if you think about it. So I defaulted to honeypot, and because I was a bit of an edgy 20-something, I decided I'll message the seller and mess with them a bit. I logged into my account on the market. I went to the user to send them a message. I asked something along the lines of, how do we know you're legitimate and not a Fed trying to arrest someone? They responded with, you don't. Which kind of solidified the honeypot idea I had in mind already. I responded with, can you prove that you're legitimate? I have the Bitcoin ready if you're an actual seller. Again, just trying to goad this person to give me anything that would confirm my personal bias. They sent me a message back saying, boy or girl, and how old. I had to think on this one for a second. I wanted to give him something that would be tough to respond with. So I said, boy, around 5. He then asked me for my name. He sent back some pictures of a little boy that looked to be around 4 or 5 years old. In the pictures, the boy looked pretty happy. He was in a basement area playing with toys, and there was one of him watching SpongeBob on TV. I was actually getting a bit nauseous with this whole thing, so I responded back saying, is he the one that's for sale? At this point, I felt like I needed to gather as much info as I possibly could to take to the authorities. The seller responded, he's one of them, yes. I then asked him to prove he didn't just send me pictures of his own kid to try and bait me. He then asked me my name again, which was a question I had tried to avoid prior. I was a bit nervous at first, for obvious reasons. So I told him my name was Marcus. It's not, but you don't tell people on the dark web your real name. After I told him my name, I hadn't gotten a response back for about an hour, and I was almost certain he was a Fed that was tracking me at this point. That is, until he did finally respond. I got a message back with an MP4 attached to it, and in the video was the boy, playing with a couple of Hot Wheels. In the video, you could hear a man talking, and I'm assuming he was the seller. The man asked the boy what his name was, and the boy said Tony. The man then asked who was filming him, and the boy said Uncle Will. Then the man said, "And who was the video for?" The boy said, "Uncle Marcus." He then asked, "And why are we making the video?" And the little boy laughed and responded with, "To find a new mommy and daddy." There was a bit more back and forth, to prove this child was legitimate, and to show the seller wasn't messing around. He then ended the video with, "Now that you can see little Tony here is very real, and in need of a good loving home, let's talk payment. I prefer Bitcoin, but will take any of the current stable coins. I'll be waiting for your response." You'd better believe I took that information and video straight to the authorities, in the form of an anonymous communication. I know, I'm a bit of a coward, but when you're a criminal taking down bigger criminals, it's best not to put your name on anything. I don't know what happened with the case. I'm assuming they pass it on to the FBI division that handles this stuff, but I haven't been hunted down or arrested or killed yet, so I guess things are going smoothly. And, unfortunately, this should serve as proof that yes, you can literally buy anything off the dark web. A Fantasy Life. Sent in by Anonymous. Hi, okay, here is my story. I was friends with my former best friend for 13 years. We were primary and high school best friends, and we were inseparable from each other. We would sleep over each other's houses, go on family holidays together, and most of my happy childhood memories have him in them. It's hard to think that I won't have new memories with him in it. I cherish the person he was, hope he'll become a better person again, and love him from a distance to protect myself. I knew that sometimes our respective boyfriends and girlfriends would get concerned about how close we were. We'd reassure them that we were friends, and wanted the best partner for the other. There was no way I was going to mess with my ex-best friend's happiness. My feelings for my friend were always platonic, never romantic, and I never flirted with him. He was someone I could always rely on to be there for me. And I would always be there for him, no matter what was going on. Out of the blue, I received a text message from his girlfriend. We were friends, and spent a lot of time together. But we were not super close, but we talked now and then. Pretty casual. She asked if I had some time to talk about something. She was a sweet person, and we're both introverts. So I'm happy she understood to ask and not just call me. I said, sure. She typed for a long time, and I groaned to myself. I think I picked my book back up to read it while I heard the vibrating sound of my phone. She found a secret Reddit account of his. And no, I'm not going to link it or post any reference to it for privacy reasons. Essentially, it was a fan fiction of him and I being together. It was weird, and she was understandably upset by it. As I read, she told me it got extremely graphic, and he would even do intimate acts on me that he knows I'm wholeheartedly against. I can't go into detail about specifics for obvious reasons. Either way, it was something I told him in private. Sure, it was fiction, but it was so incredibly creepy. I asked her for screenshots and she delivered. I got the screenshots and decided to fact check for myself. I don't tend to trust things I see or hear right away, so I continued to do some more snooping, just to be on the safe side. I found that it went back years, and mentioned private things about our friendship and me that I never told anyone but him. He gave us both code names, and I doubt people would have been able to work it out. In the story, he said how he would lift my shirt while I was sleeping to look at me naked, or he would spike my drink with things. For someone you care about to even think this? It was horrible to read. I cried, thanked her, and told her I needed some time to think about this. I talked to my other best friend. I'll call her Kathy. I met her years ago, and she doesn't take prisoners when it comes to advice. Kathy said he was a creep, but for me to talk to him because she thought I needed closure, and to get any possible evidence. Or at least hear his side of the story. And she was right. I wanted to know why he did it, and just what went through his mind when he wanted to write something like this. I hated the idea of ending the friendship, but there are some things you can't tolerate. He contacted me before I had a chance to message him, begging me to forgive him. His girlfriend broke up with him. I demanded to know what was going through his head. He told me it was just a fantasy and for me to not worry about this. Keep in mind, he had never, ever shown this side of himself. He was always supportive and validated my feelings. He told me one day he knew we would be together and start dating anyway. That I was already his. Already his? I couldn't believe it when he told me that. He never told me or gave any sign he was interested in me. I hated him so much in this moment. All the times I trusted him and relied on him to be there for me. It all felt so slimy, so sneaky, and it just ruined everything. I told him to get out and that I don't want to see him ever again. He tried talking to my parents about it, and they wanted us to repair the friendship, until I told them what happened and they agreed. It was horrible. A massive part of my life having to be cut out. I didn't feel comfortable talking to his family, even though they became like my own. They expressed to me how disappointed they were in him. It has been 2 years now since I've seen or heard from him. I wonder how he is doing, and hope he doesn't do this with any other friend of his. I still believe he's a good person deep down. I just can't be friends with someone like that. It isn't easy making friends now, and I doubt I'll ever find a friend I was as close to. And that cuts me deeply. Josh, if you ever happen to read this, I wish you well, but my friends and family do not. Left me in debt. I met Trent when I was 30 years old. We met in a relatively old-fashioned way, mainly because I shunned online dating and prefer meeting people face to face. I've always trusted my gut instincts when I meet people. We met at a town dance. I come from one of those country towns where everyone knows each other, and there's a strong sense of community out here. While people are suspicious of strangers, they tend to turn a blind eye to bad behavior from people inside the community. It was one of the most frustrating parts of living in a community like this. Despite this, I love my hometown. Trent, it is a nickname by the way, was a cousin to one of the more well-established families in the town. If you're not from one of these small towns, it can be hard to understand, but essentially, many of their family members have important businesses and own a considerable amount of property. Trent wasn't raised in town and was raised in one of the big cities. Trent was charming, sweet and caring. Everyone told me how lucky I was to be with him, and if we got married, I'd be set up for life. We dated for nearly 2 years before we moved in together. 6 months later, we were engaged, and he told me how he wanted to look after me. I've been raised by a long line of independent women who want to make sure they make their own money. Over time, I was worn down by the promises and the hope of an easy life. I let him take care of the finances. We lived a good life, regularly going on expensive trips and restaurants. New clothes and a lot of items I really didn't need. I was definitely living the good life. My friends frequently told me how jealous they were I met someone like this, and I thought I was blessed too. Whenever I tried to conserve our power usage, Trent would reassure me not to worry, and that it was covered. I didn't like this. It was wasteful. Trent and I talked about having children together someday. What we would want to name the kids, how we would raise them, and what we wanted for our family. Trent wanted a massive family with around 7 children. I'm not young by any means, and didn't realistically think I could have that many. I told him this and he was okay with it. I had 3 kids with him who are my world. I love each of them. Over time, My focus changed from us having a lifestyle around going out and socializing to raising our children. I don't think he liked the lifestyle change. But he went out of his way to spoil our kids, buying them whatever they wanted when they wanted. I told him it was bad to spoil the kids, and so, in the children's eyes, I was big mean mommy. He told me one day he wanted to leave the quiet country town we called home, a place I lived all my life. We talked about it and looked for places we could go. He seemed really panicked for some reason but wouldn't tell me what was wrong. I kept asking him if I could help, and he got really snappy at me one day, and even punched a wall. He got so worked up. This wasn't the same man I married. I woke up one day and all of his things were gone. He took a bag, left an apology note, and I called everyone. His family, his friends, the police, and there was no sign of this coming. Our children were so scared for their father and missed him terribly. It was when I found the stash of bills and credit cards that had been taken out using my name. I stared at shock at them. He hadn't been paying the bills and there were final notices approaching. I had my first panic attack and woke up on the floor. I thought it was a nightmare, but it was reality. I called up the bank and utilities company and anyone who would listen to me. I called my mum and my friends. I was terrified about what would happen. I was scared I'd lose the house and called my husband's number, begging him to come home and sort all of us out. It turns out that Trent had been in debt and had done this sort of thing before. There's a police investigation for fraud. I can't believe how stupid I was. It's taking years to properly clear my name and my credit. Financially, he destroyed me, and I wish I kept working to keep up my skills in the job market. Luckily for me, a family friend heard of my situation and gave me a job, advice, and a place to stay while things were being sorted. It was hard on the kids. They were so used to getting whatever they wanted and then had to make do with whatever we had. They'd ask where their daddy was all the time, and I'd lie to them telling them that he loves them and will be home someday. I looked for him on social media when I had the spare time. One time I found him and he was already with another woman. As the investigation went on, I discovered I wasn't the only woman he conned, and if he wasn't stopped, I won't be the last. Ever since I've been trying to repair my life, I'm getting a divorce, and at first his family tried to brush it off or blame me for what happened. I'm not going to be silenced over this. Some of the friends I had while I was living the high life disappeared when I needed them. Here is some advice I have for any young woman or man or whatever out there. Don't blindly trust someone to manage your finances. Always at least be involved in the process and keep an eye on your money. And especially, keep up your job skills in case something happens, just in case you need to re-enter the workforce. Mr. Network. Sent in by Anonymous. My dark web story is one that actually happened recently. Within the last 4 to 5 months actually. And it's one of the most disturbing and sickening things that I've ever seen or experienced in my 32 years of being on this earth. There are some really sick people out there. And I want to say to those of you listening, stay off the dark web. Enjoy the stories told by those of us who are stupid enough to get involved in it. But don't get curious enough to drag yourself into the mud. Like most people, living in this quarantine has left me with an excessive amount of spare time on my hands. I am still employed, thankfully, but I get to work from the comfort of my living room. I'm not going to name my employer or my job title for obvious security reasons, but I will say I'm pretty much the guy on the network team that gets to sit home and watch data traffic spikes for the company's applications and websites. To be honest, I probably have one of the easiest jobs out there. I have to watch a graph system, as it shows how much data our servers are pushing and receiving. And unless we get hit with a denial of service attack, there's not much to be done. If anything does happen, I have to get on the phone and talk with the other networking guys about what actions we want to take. Then have my weekly report call with my boss to tell her that everything is working as intended. We aren't a huge company, and we upgraded our servers at the end of last year, which was perfect timing. So there's honestly not a whole lot to do on the day-to-day. Based on what I just said, you can probably assume I know my way around a computer. I've worked in IT my whole career, and I like to believe I can hold my own out there. I know how networks run, I understand data routing, and I know a lot about data encryption and security. During the start of quarantine, I started studying more about data security and such, and ended up being interested in Tor, onion routing, and how the deep web and dark web differ from the surface web. If you really want some interesting reads, you should look into Mariana's Web. It's an interesting rabbit hole. As most technically adapted people do, I got both bored and curious about what existed out there in the deeper parts of the internet. I didn't want to do anything illegal, but part of me wanted to be familiar with what content and activities existed beyond the surface. I know this is stupid, but boredom and extra time can be a terrifying motivator when you kind of know what you were doing. I went through the process of setting up my personal system to get on the deep web, installed Tails, set up Tor, got a decent VPN after some vetting, did my security checks. I started going through some of the onion links that were easily accessible. For the most part, they were innocent sites that really didn't have anything crazy on them. I was simply pursuing the pages, not getting heavily involved. I found a lot of what you would expect to find: adult content, a few illegal shop sites, various conspiracy boards and other forums. Just some basic deep web content that didn't really stand out. Then I ended up on a page that I would never have expected to see on the deep web. A dating site. I say dating site, but based on the explanation of their service and some of the profiles, I think it was meant to be more like Tinder. One night stand interactions with little or no commitment. What I found was that the dating page was set up in what I could only call categories, basically split into what you were looking for in a partner. It had categories for race, ethnicity, background, sexual preference, personal kinks, and even this section that was basically for sugar daddies. If you don't know what that is, I'm not going to explain it to you. One category under the personal kinks section made me curious, as it was something I wasn't sure about. It was called Chasers. I clicked on it and decided I would spend a few minutes looking through the profiles. What I ended up finding was nothing short of legitimately horrifying. The profile I clicked on was of a middle-aged guy. He was fairly attractive, and looked like he was someone who could do well on any of the other dating apps. I was reading through who he was, trying to figure out what the hell made him a chaser, when I got to the bottom of his profile. It read the following: I'm looking for anyone who can help me achieve my lifelong dream of being physical with an HIV-infected individual. This further section further outlined how it was a goal of his to catch the disease, and that he was willing to pay almost any amount to do this. I went to another profile, and it was a young man that explained he'd been infected with COVID, and that he'll be willing to give it to anyone that wanted it for the price of a nice dinner. The third profile I went to was looking for someone to hurt or severely injure them while being intimate. And I'm not even going to explain the specifics of what he wanted, but that person definitely needed to seek help. This entire category was of people looking to catch diseases, or give diseases to each other, and a few were looking to be injured. A lot of them were willing to pay for these services, saying it was a deep fantasy of theirs. I think the most disgusting one, besides the ones I had mentioned, was a man requesting to be with a woman who had terminal cancer. There's nothing inherently wrong with being with someone who has cancer. I have no issue with that. But he was treating it like a fetish, and listed in his profile that the sicker the better. Again, he listed he was willing to pay significant amounts of money, or even take care of medical costs for this. This site cemented in my mind that there are some very, very disturbed people out there. I closed it and shut down my laptop. I won't say it was the last time I ever got on the deep web, but it definitely made me more careful about where I went, and less curious about what was out there. He cheated with someone I didn't expect. Sent in by Anonymous. Cheating is a terrible thing to do to anyone. Not sure if it matters or not, but I'm a 20-year-old gay male who recently came out of the closet. I've had issues accepting my sexuality for a long time, and only recently started to accept it. Every now and then, a part of me wonders what would have happened if I didn't come out of the closet, and if I lived a lie instead. I felt horrible when I came out to my ex-girlfriend. She cried, and I apologized over and over again. I hated how I hurt her in the process. We hugged and she understood. We're best friends now, and we're on good terms. I came out to the rest of my family and most people were supportive about it. I wasn't in any rush to get a boyfriend. I signed up to Grindr and made a profile. It didn't take long before I started receiving messages from people. I found plenty of men I liked and wanted to talk to. There were a surprising amount of people I knew on there, but I didn't interact with them or try to out them. I wanted connection with somebody rather than being intimate on the first date. Finally, I met up with someone. I'll call him Jeff to protect his privacy, and we met up on a couple of dates. Jeff was 40, but was quite attractive and I like older men. Jeff was perfect and helped me to accept myself. Or I thought he did. I spent a lot of my spare time with him and we talked all the time. He made me feel special and wanted. He was also the first man I slept with. We dated publicly and I was happy. He wanted me to move in with him really quickly, but I said no. I liked having my own space. I had my own set of keys to his place since I stayed over there all the time. It was easier for me to have my own set. I wanted to surprise Jeff with a naughty surprise, if you know what I mean. Since I wanted to surprise him, I unlocked the door as quietly as I could. I heard music coming from the bedroom, and laughing. I recognized Jeff's voice and laugh. I thought I recognized the other voice. And I realized it was my mom? Obviously there was the betrayal of a parent doing that to their child. But Jeff, he always told me he was gay and had no interest in women at all. As I rounded the corner and looked in the room, I saw them together, and there was no mistake about what they were doing. I stared at the scene in front of me, just in shock. I couldn't speak. It took them some time before they noticed me standing there. My mum leapt up crying and told me she was sorry. She didn't even bother to try to put her clothes back on. I wouldn't let her touch me when she tried to hug me. I just couldn't look at her. Jeff didn't say anything. He sat on the bed and wouldn't even look at me. But I saw him smirking. At least, I thought he did. A lot of the memory after that isn't really clear. I can't remember if I said anything to him or not. I left, drove back home and spoke to my dad about this. It broke my family apart, and my parents ended up getting a divorce. I think they secretly blamed me for what happened. I barely spoke to my mum, but she isn't the main topic here. Jeff never liked my family, and always told me they were trying to keep us apart. Jeff called me up and told me it wouldn't have happened if I was there with him. I told him that was stupid and broke up with him. I wanted to move on and not worry about things. He told other people in the gay community that I had an STD and I was a psycho. It was so damaging to me. I hated my sexuality after this experience. He stalked me on different profiles and I blocked them all. Jeff didn't stop. He kept sending me messages telling me that I belonged to him, and it was only a matter of time before I go back to him. I hated how I was so naive that I didn't realize what kind of person Jeff was. The harassment continued for years. He would show up at the house I lived with my dad at. He stalked me at my job. He tried to turn all my friends against me, and did anything he could to bring me back. I hated how he behaved. I hated him. I don't know what happened between him and my mum either. Not that I care. My ex-girlfriend was incredibly supportive, and I couldn't have made it through without her. It took years before Jeff finally moved on and left me alone. He found some other young guy who caught his interest, and I so badly wanted to warn him what he was getting into. My therapist warned me not to, and to go completely no contact with him, and I did. I needed therapy to accept what happened and to move on from it. I've done a lot of work on myself, especially when it comes to dealing with the shame from my sexuality and accepting what happened. I haven't had a relationship since, but I know I'll find the right man. I haven't and will not reconcile with my mother. She is dead to me. I want nothing to do with her now. She hurt my dog. I want to be anonymous, but share what happened with my crazy-ass ex-friend. I don't know why she did any of the things she did to me. I've always tried to do my best for her, and wanted nothing more than to be a good friend to her. I'm going to change her name in the off chance she will find out about this. I'll call her Jamie, and we were polar opposites to each other. You could say I was a quiet, well-mannered person, while Jamie was loud, rude, and outgoing. No matter the situation. It was something I liked about her. She didn't worry about what anybody thought of her. She was a rebel, and I tended to obey the rules a lot more. Jamie would do irresponsible things, and I would always end up rescuing her. If she lied to her parents, I would cover for her. If she got in trouble with teachers, I wouldn't snitch on her. At first, things were harmless. She would message me and ask me to cover for her if her parents were giving her trouble about whatever it was. Jamie was irresponsible when it came to her pets, laughing about forgetting to feed them or give them water. Keep in mind, I live in a hot climate, where it's important to regularly check to see if the animals have enough water to drink. I've always loved animals, and hate seeing any kind of abuse or neglect. It was the first time I yelled at her about anything. She had an adorable little puppy that she got bored with it because, and I quote, "it pooped too much," and she had to actually take care of it. I can't remember what stupid name she gave her, but she ended up calling her Fuzzball. She offered Fuzzball to me one day, and I brought the puppy home with me. At first my parents weren't happy about it, but they understood once I told them. My parents also told me to get my paperwork to show I own the dog now. We got the dog registered with the local council. I didn't understand why back then. I don't think they liked her very much, but I always defended my friend. Nothing happened during the next couple of months. When Jamie came over, she would always say that my dog was still her dog and it annoyed me. I told her she was now mine because Jamie didn't want to look after her. Most of the time, I would give in to whatever Jamie said to me. Jamie yelled back at me, kicked my dog and threw her into the pool. My dog is one of those small, long-haired breeds, and it didn't take her long to start sinking to the bottom. I leapt in fully dressed after Fuzzball, held her in my arms and took her out. She was struggling to breathe and finally coughed the water back up. I was so scared for her, constantly telling her it would be okay and that she was safe. Meanwhile, Jamie was laughing her head off and thought it was so funny that she nearly killed my dog. It was her actually going out of her way to mess with a living creature. I hated her so much. I screamed at her she could have died. Jamie shrugged and said she didn't care. I couldn't be friends with someone like this. Maybe if she'd shown some level of remorse for her actions, I might have given her a second chance. But no, she didn't. I told her to get out of my house and to never come back. Jamie looked stunned, but left, swearing the entire time as she did so. She blasted me over social media, made up rumors about me at school, and turned my friend group against me. She would bully me whenever I was at school, and even managed to push me down the stairs. There was a period of time when I was alone, and it was a hard couple of months because she was so damn vindictive towards me. Eventually, it got better. Some people found out about what she did and cut her off, while other people didn't seem to worry that much about it. I'm stronger for it. I stopped being such a pushover with people, and I also stopped excusing bad behavior towards me too. I'd rather be by myself than have a shitty friend. Either way, Furball is now an old Furball and has been happy with me for many years. Losing one friend meant I gained a lifelong fur friend, one who considers my feelings and is nice to be around. I can't imagine life without my dog. I hope Jamie has grown up, but she hasn't. She still avoids her responsibilities and is still a shitty person. She has kids now, and I hope she treats them much better than she does animals. I wish nothing but the worst for her, and I hope she never owns an animal. Jamie, I know the name has changed, but you are a terrible human being. I still hate you, and I want the worst for you. A Fantasy Life. Sent in by Anonymous. Hi, okay, here is my story. I was friends with my former best friend for 13 years. We were primary and high school best friends, and we were inseparable from each other. We would sleep over each other's houses, go on family holidays together, and most of my happy childhood memories have him in them. It's hard to think that I won't have new memories with him in it. I cherish the person he was, hope he'll become a better person again, and love him from a distance to protect myself. I knew that sometimes our respective boyfriends and girlfriends would get concerned about how close we were. We'd reassure them that we were friends, and wanted the best partner for the other. There was no way I was going to mess with my ex-best friend's happiness. My feelings for my friend were always platonic, never romantic, and I never flirted with him. He was someone I could always rely on to be there for me. And I would always be there for him, no matter what was going on. Out of the blue, I received a text message from his girlfriend. We were friends, and spent a lot of time together. But we were not super close, but we talked now and then. Pretty casual. She asked if I had some time to talk about something. She was a sweet person, and we're both introverts. So I'm happy she understood to ask and not just call me. I said, sure. She typed for a long time, and I groaned to myself. I think I picked my book back up to read it while I heard the vibrating sound of my phone. She found a secret Reddit account of his. And no, I'm not going to link it or post any reference to it for privacy reasons. Essentially, it was a fan fiction of him and I being together. It was weird, and she was understandably upset by it. As I read, she told me it got extremely graphic, and he would even do intimate acts on me that he knows I'm wholeheartedly against. I can't go into detail about specifics for obvious reasons. Either way, it was something I told him in private. Sure, it was fiction, but it was so incredibly creepy. I asked her for screenshots and she delivered. I got the screenshots and decided to fact check for myself. I don't tend to trust things I see or hear right away, so I continued to do some more snooping, just to be on the safe side. I found that it went back years, and mentioned private things about our friendship and me that I never told anyone but him. He gave us both code names, and I doubt people would have been able to work it out. In the story, he said how he would lift my shirt while I was sleeping to look at me naked, or he would spike my drink with things. For someone you care about to even think this, it was horrible to read. I cried, thanked her, and told her I needed some time to think about this. I talked to my other best friend. I'll call her Kathy. I met her years ago, and she doesn't take prisoners when it comes to advice. Kathy said he was a creep, but for me to talk to him because she thought I needed closure, and to get any possible evidence. Or at least hear his side of the story, and she was right. I wanted to know why he did it, and just what went through his mind when he wanted to write something like this. I hated the idea of ending the friendship, but there are some things you can't tolerate. He contacted me before I had a chance to message him, begging me to forgive him. His girlfriend broke up with him. I demanded to know what was going through his head. He told me it was just a fantasy and for me to not worry about this. Keep in mind, he had never, ever shown this side of himself. He was always supportive and validated my feelings. He told me one day he knew we would be together and start dating anyway. That I was already his. Already his? I couldn't believe it when he told me that. He never told me or gave any sign he was interested in me. I hated him so much in this moment. All the times I trusted him and relied on him to be there for me. It all felt so slimy, so sneaky, and it just ruined everything. I told him to get out and that I don't want to see him ever again. He tried talking to my parents about it, and they wanted us to repair the friendship until I told them what happened and they agreed. It was horrible. A massive part of my life having to be cut out. I didn't feel comfortable talking to his family, even though they became like my own. They expressed to me how disappointed they were in him. It has been 2 years now since I've seen or heard from him. I wonder how he is doing, and hope he doesn't do this with any other friend of his. I still believe he's a good person deep down. I just can't be friends with someone like that. It isn't easy making friends now, and I doubt I'll ever find a friend I was as close to. And that cuts me deeply. Josh, if you ever happen to read this, I wish you well, but my friends and family do not. Halloween Peeper. Sent in by Anonymous. During Halloween, I carve out pumpkins as jack-o'-lanterns and put them by the front door. My family usually end up with several of them, with people making multiple ones. It is fun for the kids and myself, and it is a family tradition we all embrace readily. The kids and I would sit on the front step, carving out the pumpkin, and the insides we use to make a variety of pumpkin snacks to celebrate. We get tasty treats, and nothing gets wasted. By the end of Halloween, I usually get bored with all the pumpkins everywhere. My wife absolutely loves it though. I love making the scary faces, especially the ones with fangs, and the most evil-looking eyes you can imagine. I want to get better with my skills when it comes to creating. My wife enjoys taking photos or videos of the pumpkins and posting them on social media. So hey, there's a chance you may have already seen one of my creations. Most of this story is pretty boring, I have to admit. The trick-or-treaters came to the house like usual. The kids look pretty cool. My kids don't like trick-or-treating much. Instead, they love opening the door dramatically and embracing their characters. My daughter plays a creepy old witch and would say, "Hello, my pretties." And my son would dress up as a zombie and would ask people for their brains. Occasionally, when someone he didn't like came to the door, he would walk in the opposite direction, implying the person didn't have any brains. I really need to sign them both up for theatre classes or something in the future. Anyway, it was a fantastic night. Soon the massive bowl of candy was gone, and the night came to a close. From what I saw, the last group of trick-or-treaters were on the way home. I curled up on the couch with the missus, while we watched a really camp Halloween movie. I can't remember which one it was. It was nice and warm being snuggled up to her. I wanted a drink and gently had to move her off me. She is so tiny, but weirdly gets so heavy when she is sleeping. I managed to slowly move her off, got up and stretched. I heard my back and all my joints pop. That happens when you get older. Kids, remember to take care of your backs. I wandered into the kitchen to find something to eat. I opened the fridge, drank some milk, and put the carton back in the fridge. I went back to the lounge room and saw something I didn't expect. All the pumpkins we made were at the windows, looking in at me. Most of the candles had already gone out, but for some, there was still a bit of light coming from them. It was so unsettling and weird. I really didn't feel threatened and figured it was probably some kids playing a prank on us. And it was a pretty good one. It scared me a bit. This wasn't what scared me. I went to look for my phone to take a picture to show my family. I had to check a couple of rooms before quickly running back with the camera ready to go. I didn't want to miss it. All the pumpkins were gone from the windows. What the hell? This was so weird. I went outside to the front door, opened it and looked. This time, all the pumpkins were on the steps, as though they were ready to walk in the front door. They were in a line, like little pumpkin soldiers of doom. It was unsettling, but I couldn't help but laugh at it. It was one of the best pranks I've ever had happen to me. I never found out who did it or why. It still makes me laugh every time I think about it. I wonder whether it was my kids or something. Maybe they do take after me more than I thought. I found a body on Halloween. Sent in by Anonymous. Hi. Alright. I'm not sure how much of my story I'm going to need to censor out. I guess you can say Halloween went from being a happy time of year to being one that fills me with dread and anxiety. I hope people don't judge me too harshly, but I guess it is out of my hands. I never thought something like this would ever actually happen. In my street, and in my neighborhood, houses and families compete with each other for who has the best decorations, who gives out the best treats, whose kids have the best costumes, and overall, who embraces it the best. People drive over from different suburbs in order to come and trick-or-treat here, or to check out the houses if they're too old for that. So, around this time of year, there are a lot of people we don't know around at the time. Keep in mind that all traditions are treated with the same amount of fanatical devotion. I've occasionally wondered whether it is a cult I live in. There are plenty of other stories for Christmas and Thanksgiving, etc. But those are for another time, I guess. I was avoiding trick-or-treaters or going to the many Halloween parties around the neighborhood. I love Halloween, but I've been going to these things since I was a child, and I'm now in my late 20s. With the same people. All the time. It may be heresy for some die-hard Halloween fans for me to say this, but I was getting sick of the same thing all the time. The fact my mother insists on me carving out a lot of pumpkins and helping with the decorating always puts me off. I wanted some time to myself, so I stayed home in my room and let my parents deal with any trick-or-treaters who came to the door. I was in my room, listening to music and watching some TikToks, chatting with friends, essentially wasting the night before it was time for me to go to sleep. Outside, there was a lot of talking, music, and occasionally kids would randomly scream. People would pretend to hurt each other, mimicking whatever killer they saw on TV or in a movie. I knew to drown it out and not worry about it. People were having some harmless fun, enjoying themselves, and I didn't need to be awake early in the morning anyway. Time went on. It was late and I could feel myself getting sleepy. I looked at the time and it was just after 3 a.m. I heard a scream that surprised me with how intense it was. It was loud enough to cause me to stop an alarm. I reached for my phone to call the police, just in case. Then I heard some loud, obnoxious laughter, and I guess it was a prank made by some kids. I exhaled, rolled my eyes, and I'm pretty sure I swore about it. I put on my PJs to get ready for bed, brushed my teeth and hair, moisturized, and made sure I did my night routine. It was nearly 4 a.m. when I went downstairs to say goodnight to my parents. They were both curled up watching a movie on the couch. We all said goodnight and I went back up to bed. I went to sleep and woke up around 6 a.m. I sleepily went down to the kitchen, got my coffee, and blended my protein shake with fruit. I sipped it and went outside to get the paper. The street was quiet. Everyone must have been sleeping off the celebrations of the night before. The costumes looked gaudy, almost silly the day afterwards, as people were walking home. I waved at them. The decorations looked silly too. But there was one of a man hanging from a tree that looked real. A lot of people complained in the past about how some of these costumes or decorations were beginning to look too real and started genuinely scaring people. Over the next couple of days, people began to take down their decorations. All the now rotting pumpkins, the giant skeletons, the fake coffins, evil dolls, and a variety of other decorations. All of it had to be put away until next year, when spooky season rolls around yet again. The man hanging was still there. And there was a disgusting smell. It smelled like rotting meat, and the neighborhood dogs were far too enthusiastic to go near it. I think you can guess where this story is going. There are two different opinions about what happened. He ended his life after his marriage fell apart, or his ex-wife hired someone to kill him. Or perhaps it was a drifter, one of the strange people who came in from the outside. I'm not sure which it is. Either way, it is incredibly unnerving that a body was hanging up in my neighborhood for a few days without anyone realizing or doing anything about it. I'm not blameless in this, but yeah. It sends a shudder down my spine whenever I think about it. The investigation is ongoing. But I think in the end, the police believe that the man decided to end his life on Halloween. Why? Well, he took that fact to the grave with him. But it didn't stop people from talking about what might have happened and all that. Halloween is still an event in my neighborhood. The man's passing has become an infamous urban legend. I guess it is based in fact. People are always drawn to the macabre. I would love to say that people change their behavior. Things are still the same, but they always whisper about the man who hung from the tree. Fortunately, no one has been tasteless enough to put out a fake skeleton or dummy to hang from the tree. She wanted my father. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm sharing this and actually sending it in, but here goes. I had a childhood best friend that I considered to be my sister. She was part of every stage of my life, and my parents jokingly referred to her as the third daughter or third child. I'm a 20-year-old male, not that it matters. I have an older brother, and my parents always wanted a daughter too. It's just how things went. We were best friends, and our friendship survived many different stages of our lives. I thought she would be my friend when we were both old and grey. My brother is 23, and he and my best friend started dating. I gotta admit, it was a little weird at first, and I was worried about what would happen if they ever broke up. But I also know my brother is a good guy and would also never do anything to hurt her. And I wish I could say the same about her. To be fair, if things did work out for them, it would have been perfect since she was already a member of our family. They were dating for around 9 months, and everything looked to be fine. There was no signs of any problems. As a family, we all had each other's cell numbers for a long time now. It's normal. Out of the blue, she started trying to get the family on Snapchat, and my parents didn't want to use it, being boomers and all. Getting my parents to upgrade anything or change is difficult. But eventually they did. I'd get random emojis from them all the damn time. My parents love sitting on the couch together and sending cheesy, romantic emojis and little videos to each other. This next part is based on what I've heard. I never personally saw the messages, and I'm relying on that. My best friend added my parents and joined the family chat group. We would post random updates, pictures, memes, and other things in the chat. My brother and best friend went to the beach together and posted a lot of pictures. I scrolled down so I wouldn't have to look at the notification alert. My best friend was in a bikini, and there was nothing weird about that. She then DM'd my dad, asked him what he thought, and he said that he thought she looked nice. My dad can be pretty oblivious when it comes to women flirting with him. I'm the same way. She sent a couple more. Each picture got more and more lewd. She was still technically covered, but the intention had clearly changed. My dad told me there was a text message with, "What do you think?" with a teasing kiss emoji. My dad wasn't upset about this. He told me he thought she intended to send it to my brother, and told my mum about it. My dad told her he sent it to the wrong, insert our last name here. He was trying to be good-natured and not embarrass her. She messaged back and told him that, no, she did in fact send it to the right one. My dad was worried about this. He showed it to my mom and was shocked. My parents were worried that maybe her phone or account had been hacked into, or someone had stolen her phone. My dad said this wasn't okay, and whoever it was to give the phone back to my best friend. She sent back a winking emoji in response. My parents are close and have always had a very strong marriage. They were concerned about my best friend, and also what this would end up doing to me and my brother. Both of them knew they couldn't not tell us. We were called down for a family meeting, and we both complained about it. We didn't think it would be life-changing. This is when I found everything out. My dad showed my brother and I the messages. We didn't believe it was her at first. She couldn't do this to us. She would never. My brother wanted to make sure it was her before dumping her, so he called her. She picked up and they spoke. I'm surprised my brother held it together because I would have lost it at her. He asked where she was and what she'd been up to. She said she was home alone and they video chatted. Sure enough, she was at her parents' house in her room, and from what we could see, she was completely alone. No one could have taken her phone. He asked her outright if she sent those pictures to our dad. We were all in the room and could hear everything she said. She told him that our dad wanted her to send them, and that she had to do it or he threatened to make up lies about her. I couldn't believe my best friend would lie to us like this, or to throw my dad under the bus when he didn't do anything wrong. I was hurt. I'm still hurt over it. My mom thought of her like a daughter, the daughter she never had. There are so many different levels to the betrayal. No one in my family wanted to meet with her, but I did, one last time. She told me she was sorry, that it would never happen again. She missed my family and we all meant so much to her. I asked her why, again and again, and she wouldn't give me an answer. This went on for over an hour. I left. I couldn't do it anymore. I was done. I hate what she did to our family, but we are strong. I miss my friend every single day. But I feel even more guilty about bringing her around in the first place. They keep telling me it isn't my fault and not to worry. I can't help it though. I looked at her social media recently. They were all posts about losing faith in humanity and being disappointed in people around the time the whole thing went down. As though my family was somehow wrong about this. That's my crazy ex-best friend story. I hate how it ended, but it had to. Left me there. Written by Anonymous. I was left alone at a park in the bad side of town by my ex-best friend and extended friend group. This is what happened. This story brings up so many terrible memories for me it is hard to go through, and some parts I don't really want to go into detail about. I hope you can understand why. There was a time in my life when I ran pretty wild. Partying, drinking, and all the things that came with it. I was failing at school, and a lot of my school friends were doing the same. I wasn't innocent. I know I could be an absolute bitch to people. My best friend told me about a party that was happening during the school week. Not that I cared. My parents tried to keep me home. I screamed at them and pushed them out of the way. Nothing ever stopped me from going out. I grabbed a lift with some friends, and they were already drinking in the car. I joined in. I wasn't one to turn down a drink for anything. I was pumped for the party, and screamed with happiness when I saw my best friend there. She was already dancing and having a good time. When she saw me, she ran up, hugged me, and told me we were in for a wild night. And we certainly were. We were partying and having an amazing night. There were about 30 people there. Maybe some more, maybe less. I was having the time of my life. We were playing drinking games, and I had a little too much to drink. And when I say too much, I got blackout drunk. I woke up the next day surrounded by trash and bottles. I didn't have my phone with me or anything. I was missing half my clothes. I didn't know at the time what had happened. I was so scared and sick. There were a few people around, but I saw a woman walking her dogs and she called my parents for me. They were so angry with me, but they were happy I was safe. I didn't want to think about it. I just wanted to get home and relax. So when I got home, I drank a lot of water, washed my face, even though I couldn't get the dye off, and slept for hours. My friends had written crude words on my face and just left me there. When I woke up, my parents spoke to me about what happened and I told them. I regretted my decisions and I still felt so sick. And it was for the first time in years I cried in front of my parents. A genuine cry. I wanted to know what had happened. I pranked people before, but I've never left them anywhere dangerous or did anything that could seriously mess up with their health. Or write on their damn face with Texter. Since I didn't have my phone, I logged into the computer and into MSN. Normally I'd log in and get a heap of messages, but this time, there were barely any at all. I messaged my best friend and asked what happened. She sent me back some laughing emojis, and then sent me pictures she took of me being passed out, with Texter marks all over my face. I talked to some more people and they sent me the same images. From the looks of things, no one tried to stop them. No one tried to help me. I was left there and anything could have happened to me. The pictures were posted online as well. Sometimes I see them pop up again and it hurts. The bullying at school meant I had to change schools because it followed me everywhere. Then I had to leave that school too. Eventually, I ended up being homeschooled. I didn't want to go out anymore. I used to love going shopping or clubbing. Sometimes I managed it, only to find out the person I was now friends with was also friends with one of my high school ex-friends. Their bullying was online too. I had to make some new accounts to escape it. I made some online friends in various online communities. It didn't help though. I became a shell of a person. I now have a lot of anxiety and I'm scared to leave the house, just in case I run into someone from high school. With any new people, I'm worried they will find out and stop being my friend. I've had to have a lot of therapy in order to recover from what happened. I still get nightmares about it, and some people have reached out over social media to apologize for what happened years ago. I don't know how I feel about it. They emotionally tortured me for years when I didn't do anything to them. They have the damn audacity to expect me to ease their conscience and reassure them that they're good people? No! They can pay my therapy bills if they're serious about it. It hurts how I now need to do the job to heal and get well. It all feels incredibly unfair. As for my ex-best friend, I haven't seen or heard anything from her. I blocked her and everything after what she put me through. I have heard she still finds what happened to me funny and brings it up to whoever will listen. I trusted her. She clearly didn't care about me, and I can't believe she did that to me. Who knows what could have happened to me when I was left out there alone and drunk. I hope karma catches up with her someday. I hate her, and all my old friends for how they treated me. No one stuck up for me or tried to help either. I could have been killed or worse. That is how I stopped being friends with my best friend, and the group of people I thought were my friends. I thought I had a lot of friends I could rely on and who cared for me, but it was all a lie. I've made friends since then. Nothing has gotten rid of the scars they have left behind, though. I hope you enjoyed these stories. Let me know if you would like to hear more stories in the rain. All my social media links are available in the description below. This video is made with the support of my incredible channel members, Patreon subscribers, and all my viewers. Thank you so much for supporting me. Stay safe, my little spooklings. And remember, I'll be watching you.